as I figured for the exhaust, all out of spec, 0.19, 0.21, 0.16, 0.25, 0.11, and 0.20. So it should be 0.26 millimeters to 0.30 millimeters. So we do need to increase the size of the valve clearance to get within spec. If you think about it, the shim inside the bike right now is giving us these measurements. To increase the gap, we need to shrink the size of the valve shim. So we will calculate how much we need to decrease it by, but first we do need to remove the valve shims and actually measure them. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. Okay guys, so before we can actually remove the camshafts and the valve shims, we do need to set the first cylinder to bottom dead center, and we do that by spinning the flywheel, of course, counterclockwise until we see the triangle marking in the peak hole. And you do want the straight edge of the triangle, the edge with the 90-degree, to line up with the markings on the engine case. Once it's there, you can go ahead and remove the cam chain tensioner. Then finally the camshaft caps, the actual camshafts, the buckets, and then finally the valve shims. So let's do that right now. They are marked, the measurements on the actual valve shims, but I just double checked with my caliper to make sure it's all correct, and it all matches. We calculated this to be the exact valve shim we need to actually set us to the upper limit of the valve clearance to 0.30. But we are unable to buy this if we're buying Yamaha shims. The closest thing we can probably buy is a 1.75. But the valve shim we do buy and we do put in, we want to double check it will still set us in the target clearance. And that's 0.31 millimeters, and that's just right outside the target clearance by 0.01. And I was going to the dealership expecting to maybe just buy that, because what I'm seeing is the valves are tightening over time, so maybe as I ride it, it'll just set itself into the target clearance. But what I found is he offered me Honda shims because they are quite a bit cheaper than the Yamaha shims, and they actually sell in between sizes. So I actually picked up a 1.78. So we'll double check what that is going to give us. We'll just do the calculation one more time. So in the end, we do get 0.28 millimeters, which is right in the middle of the target clearance. So that's perfect. So again, I was able to do this with the Honda shim. And what I came with, I got 1.78, 1.78, 1.75, 1.8, 1.7, 1.78. These are the calculated valve shims I need. Okay guys, so at this point we are going to drop in the camshafts, and I am going to grease them up a little bit with this assembly grease I got from the dealership. So just a light coat. Okay guys, so at this point we do have the camshafts on the bike, and you do want the dots facing out so that they will line up with the camshaft caps, just as we took it off the bike. You need to put the cam chain over the sprockets once you're installing the camshafts. You do want to start in the front of the engine with the exhaust camshaft sprocket, removing the slack, then after still continuing to pull and remove slack, and then put it over the intake camshaft sprocket. That's because you want the slack towards the rear of the engine so the cam chain tensioner can remove it. Okay guys, so this is the cam chain tensioner, of course. It took a while to remove because the only way I found is this Allen key. But when inserting it, another thing we have to think about is actually we need to compress the spring, and you do that by, it's a 3mm hex. Typically these are the regular sizes you get, right? This is too long because it's gonna hit the frame, so you do need to shave it down a little. So if you have an extra one, just shave it down. And then you do need to insert it in the hole, turn it left, and it will compress the spring just like this. And when reinserting it, you do need to keep the tool in there, tighten down the bolts, and then remove the key, and then it will allow the spring to expand. But of course, after it's all tightened down, okay? So this ball end on this hex wrench is actually really helpful in attacking the inner one. It's a pain to get to. Okay, then I'm gonna remove the tool. Okay, I feel tension. Okay guys, at this point I am gonna spin the engine over with the breaker bar, not a ratchet. And I'm gonna go really slowly just to double check we didn't mess up anything with the timing, okay? Okay guys, so unfortunately, I referenced my photo I took, which you definitely wanna do before taking everything apart from when it was stock, and it doesn't match when I put it back together now. And I do see the dot on the cam chain, or the camshaft on the intake side doesn't line up when this one does on the exhaust, and I can tell it's just off one tooth. So it was enough to not hit anything, but I'm gonna go ahead and take everything apart and redo everything. Okay guys, so I thought about it a lot. It's been taking me a while. So what I did is, I didn't even remove the cams. I just, you know, had the chain loose, and then I turned the cam gear. There might be a tool to insert here and then turn the gear, but what I did is I just took it's a 10 millimeter bolt right here. I just took a socket and just used my ratchet to turn the gear, cam, putting leverage, you know, right at the top. Just turning it clockwise and just getting it to skip a tooth. And then it's gonna want to jump back. So what I did is I have only one zip tie left and then this tie wrap tied. But what I'm gonna do is I do have the cam chain tensioner I need to release, and then it should be set. Hopefully this doesn't skip because I do have this zip tie. So let's see. Okay, it didn't skip. And then I am gonna turn the engine over, and let's see now if I have my timing right. Okay guys, so I removed the zip tie and the other tie I had on the cam chain. Everything was free. I spun the engine over really slowly to make sure nothing was hitting or binding. And everything lines up perfectly, so super happy about that. In the peak hole is the triangle showing for bottom dead center. The dots on the camshafts, both of them are lining up with the cam caps perfectly, so super happy about that. When you look at it at this angle, sometimes when it's off, it still looks good. You have to look at it through here, and it does look perfect, so super happy about that. Essentially, when just setting the camshafts down gently and tightening the caps on them, setting the chain, it's not going to be perfect, because when it's all set, there is some pressure on the valves. So the method I did, like I said, I spun the cam with the ratchet, just let it skip a tooth, and when it's skipped a tooth and it's on the chain, it's gonna want to jump back, so be careful with your hands. I very carefully inserted the zip tie through the hole and secured it to make sure it wouldn't skip. And then I set the cam chain tensioner, and then after it was set, I could cut the zip tie, like I said. And everything is all, you know, looking good. So I'm just gonna check the valve clearances one more time, and then we can put everything back together.